Hello, everyone. Richard Carlton here. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training at fmtrain.tv. We are learning about the Claris FileMaker platform. It's very exciting. Today is day one of 5 days, and it's pretty exciting. And so what we're going to be doing is building a part system, and we're going to eat our own dog food. So in the event that the dog food is toxic or poisonous, we're all going to be dead. But that's why we eat our own dog food. So when we go to meetings at Claris, we can talk to them with personal experience as to how the product works and how to promote it, things like that. So it's pretty exciting. So 5 days of building a part system. This is something we've talked about on and off with Big Valley Aviation for a while now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to step through this from today is largely kind of a planning and maybe structuring day, but I need everyone to ask questions. And so we can incorporate maximum learning, if that makes any sense. So that's this week. I know some of you are going to want to talk about stuff at the end, like at the end of like day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Some of you are going to want to spend more time on the stuff on the front end. We're going to do the whole thing. If you have questions, please ask. This is being recorded. We will be given back to you. Real quick, if you want to support the channel, reminder, we're not saying go give us Patreon dollars or things like that. Just buy one of our training subscriptions. We greatly appreciate the support of the channel so I can pay Jacob and Margaret and everyone else that contributes to this. You can find all this at fmtraining.tv. So with that in mind, we're going to pivot real quick and get into this conversation. It's very important, Margaret, that you chase down and give us questions on this stuff. So I'm actually here right now. I was here last week. I just talked to them about their top concerns and things. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen at the moment. We're going to start with this conversation right here. What we did is we did it's been ongoing for about a year, but this is the essential elements of us interviewing. There's 4 different really stakeholder groups at Big Valley, right? And so let's start with this one real quick. If we have questions along the way, feel free to ask the questions, but I'm trying to establish the problem. I mean, you can't build a solution unless you really understand the problem. A lot of us just start building a database willy-nilly right off the bat. I like starting a database willy-nilly right off the bat. It's the way I roll, but because I'm trying to set a good role model for be a good role model for everyone.
We're not just going to slap some fields together and call it a day and then figure out where we screwed up
Well,
there.
yeah, we slap it together and tomorrow you figure out how far you missed the mark.
Yes.
So basically, the short version is, if I scroll down here, this is the paper form that we see down here. This is what they call an MR. It's a material requisition. It's basically when they're working on an aircraft, and it isn't even an aircraft, it's a car, vehicle, any sort of thing. These are the consumable part. Now, these might be consumable parts as dumb as an oil filter or a quart of oil, but it might be a serialized part like a starter or a rotor blade would be kind of extreme, but technically that would be a part too. And that would be a serialized part with a serial number on it. So obviously I don't see serial number on here. So while this is their MR, we're going to use this as a baseline, right? We're going to use this as a baseline to build what they really need, which is kind of a live MR that lives in FileMaker. They already have a database in FileMaker, so we're going to add this as part of what they have. If I scroll down here real quick, you see this picture. The MR is this carbon kind of form. For those who, Margaret, that's called, well, it used to be carbon sheets in here. Now they kind of figure out how to do it by not having the carbon sheet in here. And so the goldenrod, this is the yellow kind of goldenrod color here. This would go to the parts person maybe, and then when she orders it, she returns it. She returns the pink one back to them. This is the height of technology in 1970. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of pretty colors flying around, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, and there's some white ones down below there as well. So what I want to do is just going to go through this. And Margaret, if I have questions, I need you to watch. But you know this, Mark. You've been interviewing with them or talking to them in interviews.
Well, yeah,
so
I mean, technically, one of my very first conversations ever with BVA was about the part system.
Yes.
So,
but the thing is, they needed to get their core business going first before they worried about the parts. And
yeah.
So right now, what they're doing is they're using their database system here, and then they're still using the paper down here. So we're going to take this paper and add it over here. Now, what we're going to do for all of you, and this is going to be as we go. I got a copy of FM Starting Point 25 for the year 25. This is going to be out shortly. It's basically identical. And we're going to build a light or some variation of the system in here. So y'all get this as well. And so thus far with this file, I took a copy of the file, I put it on a server because I do the development on the server. All I've done is I wanted to actually show you all this real quick. I go to layout mode. So when you get FileMaker initially, I'm going to say customize toolbar. Uh, this is what it looks like. When you get FileMaker and you go to browse, you have browse mode here, go to layout mode. The ability to flip layouts rapidly with some sort of scroll flipper thing. The marketing department had this removed a while back. In order to flip, to jump a layout forward or backward, you have to go here, then go here, then hunt your ass down through the system to figure out where the hell you're supposed to be. Hopefully get to the right spot. And then down here, you'll see that I duplicated the 1100 layout. And the original one is here. I duplicate it, and the new one's the duplicated copies. We have a backup is B. A is the one that all the buttons are using. That'll be the new one where we're going to kind of chop it up. So I'm kind of trying to preserve the original on here. So if someone wants to ask, hey, what did this originally look like? We have that. With this stupid problem up here, you have to in layout mode, right click, tool, customize toolbar, drag this back up here. So now I can flip easily forward on a layout and check out other things, right? What I did over here is I've already created, what I did is I created a part section right here. And that's all I've done thus far. We haven't done anything structural besides kind of hogging out a spot that we're going to need, okay? But this is a file that you'll be able to get. I don't plan on giving this to you folks until we're done on Friday. Just so before is that a sample file? Yes, there is. You don't get till Friday, okay? And I'm going to have to have Margaret repeat that 12 times just so everyone knows. So real quick. So this one you can't have, the other one you can't have. So let's go through so we have to interview the customers or waterboard them if they're not being cooperative. We've had this conversation not too long ago with the 60-day. It's how to decide what goes in the database. So we know we have paper. We know that they have FileMaker on the other end. They like FileMaker, so they want the paper to go into FileMaker. So that's how the whole thing starts. So we say, concern the paper process doesn't work well, paper getting lost. Yeah, no shit. Mechanics not always putting parts used for a customer on a work order. So what happens behind me, for those of you wondering about this, there's a deadline coming up. The guys leave here. They get here early, and then they leave like at 4:30. And if they're trying to get something out the door by 4:30 and it's 4:10 and they need some little O-ring or something, they're going to run upstairs, steal it out of the parts department, bring it back down here, put it on the helicopter, have it work, roll out the door. The customer takes delivery, flies away. The mechanic says it's already 4:45. Screw this. I'm out of here. I've been here for, coming up on 9 hours or whatever it is. I'm going home. Screw you guys. I'm going home.
So and the O-ring vanishes into the void, is what you're
correct.
telling me.
And so the O-ring is never filed on the paper here. Okay. Well, whose fault is that? I mean, that's still going to be a problem. That's more of an HR or a personnel or human problem. But I think the goal is to make it easier overall. And that allows you to focus on the human problems to get ahead of them, to incentivize people to do it correctly. So not billing a customer for parts, you're losing money. Parts manager does not have visibility into what the mechanic needs. So once again, there's a parts person. For those of you who want to Margaret, I'm going to stop sharing here real quick. I'll come back to here momentarily. So here's the deal. This is the shop with a bunch of helicopters. Way up there at the top, you see the upstairs up there, over there?
Yes.
See the upstairs up there? That's where all the parts hide. And so they actually could put a pit bull dog or some sort of security system to keep you from going, because there's stairs there, and you can go up there. And they've set me up there. One of the initiations they do, that hazing the new people, is go find this part. There's like 5,000 parts up there, and they have different like ID
so
numbers.
It's like someone tell you to look for headlight fluid.
Yes, we have headlight fluid. So go find it. And so each part has its own primary key, but the keys are, you can find a group of them that are together, but really there's probably 20 different like sets of parts where, then it increments by one or something, right? They don't use UUID, thank God, or we'd never be able to find anything. So this is what I typically forage for parts. So what happens, a part will go up there, he'll forage for parts like Yogi Bear looking for picnic baskets in the forest. And they forage it, they bring it down, they may or may not write it down. They certainly will not turn the paperwork at the end of the day. Not because they're evil people, they're very nice people. It's just that they're really busy and the customer's breathing down their throats, if that makes sense, right? Question.
no questions
All
that
right,
I
so
can
moving
see.
down. So this is not necessarily a comprehensive list. This is kind of the short list. So we wrote this down just to like have, once again, this is me. I have all this in my head, which is probably not the best plan because Margaret can't read my mind. So we have a two developer project here. We have a two developer project. So we need to write it down just so we communicate well together. So down here is the various forms. I don't really particularly care what the colors do, except that the colors mean different things to different people. For
Yeah.
candidate's perspective, the parts manager should provide timely service by pulling the parts for them. Okay. She's the parts manager and the mechanics don't tend to get along here for a wide variety of reasons, for whatever, but each has an expectation of the other that the other isn't meeting. I think once again, a big part of this as you work with people is that you build a system, you make the system better, more robust, more reliable in terms of under visibility for everyone. And then some of the problems will go away on their own, and some of the problems you're going to have to stomp on someone to explain to them that's their job and they have to do this. I don't actually know what will happen here. My guess is that about half the problems they have will go away. The other half are going to be human related, and you have to deal with that. I've had I saw a parts area for another company, and and a lot of these companies, like little stupid oil filters and shit, are kind of an open area where they can be pilfered. But certain things like a rotor blade for a helicopter could be anywhere from $40,000 to $90,000 for a single rotor blade. That's on smaller helicopters. So anything that's expensive like that will be in the locked cage with a giant lock and a pit bull dog on it. And I'm being serious about that. So all the parts that have a value over some dollar amount, they won't pilfer. Those are also non-commodity parts. So commodity part, once again, is toilet paper is a commodity, quart of oil is a commodity, things like that. They're not serialized. If it has a serial number that that's a piece of a specific, airspeed indicator or whatever, it'll have a serial number. We have to track that. So that's not a commodity. Mechanics perspective, they hate delaying customers when the problem is the parts manager not ordering parts in a timely fashion. So what happens is that it's kind of it's kind of a giant mess because there's a FileMaker system we're going to use to kind of coordinate. There's a separate part system that they have, which will allow them to order from 4 different distributors, right? So they put the part number in and they can say, get the best price and put all this together and parts come in. Okay. The problem is if the parts manager isn't around, like today, she's totally gone, right? So then they need a part today. They're going to go up and get a part. Okay. And it may or may not be written down. And then one of the problems is that she doesn't know to deduct it out of the inventory system, out of the separate system. So in their case, that we're going to, I'll get this momentarily, but there's two systems that are going to be kind of, one's an inventory and an ordering system that talks to all these distributors. The other one's FileMaker, okay? And of course, some of you are thinking where we're going to connect that. First, we want to get them to use it and them to be happy, and then them to complain that they don't want to do double data entry from one system to the next system. But I think
we have to get to that stage first.
Yeah, I want them to be happy with FileMaker, and then we do the integration down the road because that's always when we talk about low hanging fruit and make it simple. Integrating with other third party system is not low hanging fruit. Low hanging fruit is getting rid of the paper and making it simple. But doing double data entry with an API with a system, I'm assuming they have API. Who knows if they have an API? We have no idea.
Yeah, we'd have to do like OData or something, and that's a
Who
whole.
knows if they even support it? So the point is that she's gone. They're going to pull the parts down. And I was just talking to them. They were in here and having lunch, and they're like, "Well, we have five. We say we have to have five on inventory, okay?" And they have 5 helicopters that are being worked on, say oil filters, right? And they pull those 5 oil filter kits out, okay? Well, there's 0 inventory now in the system, but the 5 are on the floor being installed. She doesn't know that. She thinks she still has 5. Right. See what I'm saying?
So yeah, they'll come tell her, yo, we don't have any oil filters.
Well, no,
What are you talking about? Yeah, exactly.
So maybe Friday this week, they're going to turn all the piece of paper in. All the piece of paper get turned in, right?
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, Friday afternoon, I'm going home. So then Monday morning, she comes back, she starts triaging the paperwork. The 6th and 7th helicopter roll in for an oil change. And this number 6 and 7 oil filters aren't there. So it's this whole kind of thing. It's why paper is the way it is and why computers came along and knocked them off. So now if you had an older computer system, we've had older computer systems that suck. You need a good system that you can customize to fit your needs, right? And so literally we're starting this today with all of you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to share. If we have questions along the way, Margaret, please interrupt me. Oh, let's see. So integrate with third-party system, not today. It's not going to be necessarily easy or low-hanging fruit. We'll save that for after we have FileMaker kind of ironed out and we're happy with it, right? Annual parts verification. So once a year, she does an audit to figure out what's in there and what's not in there, and it takes her months within us to do that. I think if FileMaker was actively being used, she'd still have to, because the idea with FileMaker is just going to tell you what the customer's using, but it's not going to keep a inventory. I'm going to build it so we can support in starting point like an inventory level. To be honest with you, it'll a very little bit of extra work to do that. But in their system here, the inventory that like how many is in stock, that issue, that number is being maintained in a system called Quantum. It's a aviation parts database system. So not their system, it's something that they subscribe to. So once again, that's an integration point down the road. So so this is the parts manager. Here's other concerns. Doesn't want to be bugged by the finance person. So on the parts requisition, if we come back over here, there is a column right here for the price and cost and the selling price. And the parts manager should know what the parts price is. She might know the selling price. But the rub is that the finance person who is in a different office in a different town of all places, she's never going to see this paper. She doesn't know which of these she can bill. She should bill the customer periodically. And so the idea, our big picture idea is to take this, electrify it, add a couple additional columns, and then allow each item to be managed individually. So it's either you needed one, you got one, you don't have to order it, and then there's a cost, and then it's $5. You're going to charge the customer $10 or whatever they're going to do with this, right? I have no idea. But the idea is that then that the finance person could see that this has been issued, it's done, and there's the price, and she can just take care of it. Then there should be a checkbox in here or something like that with a date and time or something saying the finance person has billed the customer for this, been billed. Yeah, one of the problems they have is they have a couple things in here will be reordered, right? On an order, a couple things will be already installed and good. And so it's like we're back to the old database system, why we have a relational database. In a database, we can cut each of these lines out separately and treat them separately in found sets, things like that. Here, the lines are all literally glued together because they're on one piece of paper. So does that make sense, Margaret? We need to chop because these two could be ready to be built. These two have been built. These two we needed them, couldn't find them. They're back ordered because there's all sorts of columns.
There's all sorts of other extra information.
Other columns we haven't done that yet. Yeah. So let's see about this. Want to work with doesn't know what parts have priority. Mechanics know which parts should always be in stock. Parts man generally knows a little about this, except that she or he or whoever the mechanical maintenance person or the parts person is going to see certain parts come through with a higher turnover, right? She buys every month, she buys 50 of them, and whereas some parts she buys 5 of them and it lasts a whole year, right? Stuff like that. There's a pedigree with certain parts. Once again, this is if they're serialized, right? This is a really big deal in aviation, right? In automobile land, only if there's 100,000 of them made improperly, and like maybe there's a fire or something like that, there'll be a recall eventually. With aviation, it's like that deal in New York, right? They're trying to figure out why that helicopter came apart in New York, and it's not entirely clear. That's a whole story in itself, but it's not entirely clear what happened. Once they figure out what part caused the problem, then they're going to pull the serial number for the part. They're going to figure out when that part was manufactured, and then they're going to issue what they call an emergency airworthiness directive, which means you have to stop what you're doing, like right the hell now, right? And then you have to go see if you have that range of parts, like it's part number 5,000, and every part from 4,900 to 5,100 are potentially suspect. And so if you have that, you have to pull it off. Okay. And put on a different serial number part, right? That makes sense. So that's where this is why the serial number becomes an issue, because shit happens on TV and you folks wonder what happens from that. If they figure out there's a bad batch of parts, then they will issue an emergency alert nationwide. So this is the issues here. Finance manager doesn't know what parts should be billed for, has to call the parts manager to figure it out. So the parts manager decided that they didn't want to be bothered by the finance manager. Okay. And so there has to be visits. So part of our problem here is that not only do we have to make this live for everyone, there's going to be little variations from what the mechanic sees to what the parts person sees to what the finance person sees. And then maybe the boss or overall general manager, operations manager can see maybe all of it, probably, right? And that's part of what we're going to figure out in this conversation. So with that in mind, you get kind of an idea what's going on with this, right? So this is partly what this was over here. Not that one, wherever it went. Did I lose it? There it is. Right here. Yeah, we're documented what the verbal interviews said. Okay. So we have that. I close that. So then we have to work out the workflow, right? Once again, this is where it's in our head. If it's just you and yourself and you're not working with anyone else to build it, this is not necessary. I mean, I think it's a good idea to do some planning on it. And then we'll get to this. So this is the workflow: helicopterized for service, mechanic. And then so this date and this date are not necessarily the same dates. Mechanic starts works. Mechanic does have a cheat sheet of commonly used parts in their iPhone, henceforth this thing right here.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so they know that they need a cheat sheet. And
It's
I've
just,
actually
on a
I've
random
actually been
iPhone
over her.
list.
See, like you see how this was grouped right here? That's me and one of their junior mechanics getting together trying to the list. Because
Ah,
the list
not
mostly looks like,
organized.
see this down here, it's all like mayhem down here. We're like, like whatever. That right there is the incomplete part number. All sorts of just shenanigans. So what you're trying to do is validate it, get it all set. Then we're going to put this into the database system. And so they can, because all these you need on a standard oil change. Let's say it's an annual. So for those of you, so every 5 to 10,000 miles, you're supposed to get your car, if you're using a gas combustion powered car, an oil change. Somewhat depends. It used to be of course, some of the oil change people want you to come in at every 2,000 miles, so you spend more money with them. But generally, it's 5 to 10,000 miles you're going to come in. Every annually, they'll do an inspection, and these parts typically are the ones that always get consumed on that. Down here is where the cleanup ended. So this is kind of the show mess that goes on, and this is what. And then when one mechanic is hired, etc., they share this document. This shared document. I got them. If I change put doggy doo doo 5, it'll sync to their notes apps, right? And so part of this is to get it correct and kind of lock it down a little bit. That's another idea. So rides in. Mechanic needs parts. Mechanics does the parts. So they need the parts. Mechanics. I think that's goes.
That is supposed to be goes.
To the parts room upstairs, right? Finds what they need because there's no chain link fence and no pit bull dog, and they need it. They need it right now. They need it like right now. Need right now. Okay. And so then this gets into this bit over here. So they start the paperwork process, right? Then they go upstairs, they pill for parts. They maybe either they write it down or they don't write it down. That's fine. And even if they write it down, they're supposed to turn the paperwork in every day. Well, that's a giant pain in the ass, right? We were talked about it's 4:45. I should have left 15 minutes ago. I'm not going to keep doing that. So eventually the paperwork gets so only when they turn in the paperwork does the parts person see it, right? And then there's the boss can see it, then the parts manager can see it. I'm not sure if it's like this, maybe like this part of it. I think that's one of the things we would figure out as we were going when they like turn it in. Now, see, what we're going to do is instead of doing the whole piece of paper, each individual line can live in this world. That makes sense. So each individual line of that parts thing can be there, right? So
Exist on the record, yeah.
yeah, so let me duplicate this. Let me right click and turn. Oh, that makes sense, everyone? So somewhere along the line, the boss gets it. So instead of us dealing with this whole group of 20 or 30 items on there, each individual line will be able to live this way. So the trick is for us to build this. So we're kind of the point where we want to build this a little bit and talk about this. Margaret, do we have any questions yet?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, so right here we see on this aircraft right here, we see a thing called parts and consumables. Okay. When we first started this project, we knew they needed this. So we built out this is a work order table. There's a parts table. So that gets into this idea of maybe relationally connecting stuff together a little bit. So if we say there is a work order, then there's going to be one or more parts that might be used on that work order. So let me move this out of the way over here, put this up here. So these are, let's say parts for work orders. So work orders, they come in, they do some and then it leaves. Let's assume that that's a definition of work order. So it spans multiple days, multiple mechanics, multiple to-do lists. Okay, so work order will have multiple parts. Technically, so all of you understand this, a work order will also conveniently have a bunch of, I'm just going to put this in here so everyone's cool on this, but it also can have a bunch of tasks or AKA discrepancies. Okay, and I've learned how to spell that word, which is really exciting. So we've already built all this for them and it's in the
Yes.
fine tuning stage. We're building this piece right here. So the parts for the workhorse, these are parts actually used on, and what I did is the reason I did this is there's a reason here. So one of the things that happens here is they came to me and they said, hey, by the by, move that down here. All these parts we're going to need on an annual. So it'd be really great if we pressed a button and all this showed up. And I realized that on a per, if you have a common maintenance thing you're going to do, like every year an aircraft gets in, like a hot air balloon I think does an annual on his balloon. I don't know what that entails besides making sure there aren't holes in it or no rips in it. I assume he would do that every time he flies, but maybe hot air balloon only cares about woodpeckers chewing holes in his hot air balloon once a year, and he's going to put patches in to fix it or something. Or the basket, he has a cup holder for his beer in the hot air balloon basket, so people couldn't drink while they're flying. And so maybe the basket is certified to hold big people like Richard, right? So whatever. So the idea is that if this is used on a work order, we want to be able to have a script that runs that will load records from there. So we have basically what we need to do is parts. I would say individual parts that may be used on a work order. So the idea is that, well, here's a list of parts over here. And so like write a script that'll grab these and move them in here. Okay, that's a loaded question. Margaret, you see where I'm going with this, right? And you Margaret kind of see where this is.
Yeah. So,
Well, you walk through it. How far can you take that conversation? So they said, hey, it'd be really great if this would just show up over here.
Well, because the problem is that like even if you do that, it would need to automatically subtract from the part system itself that you're using that part on that thing. And what if they don't use it? Like, are they really going to go back through and look through and go like, "Oh, we didn't actually use this right here"?
Well, that's
Ugh.
also part of this conversation. But my comment here is even more basic, and Margaret's not saying that right now. I was waiting for her to say that. I said, remember, so how are they going to actually do this? This is where our experience comes in. Well, show me all the parts that God ever made for an aircraft, and I'll just pick them off of there. Okay, Air Force One, 747, 100, or whatever the hell it is. It's old as shit. Well, we need the presidential cup holder, presidential cappuccino maker, right?
Okay.
That's not fun in any way. So how do we speedily add the parts?
Well, you'd have to have the library filled with all the potential
Well,
helicopter.
what
Oh,
library?
Oh, you would need to make a
See,
collection, a place
this
that
is
would.
this is the trick when you're a trainer, Margaret, is to make sure you don't jump ahead. Don't jump ahead to confuse people. So we have to have a way of identifying this list. Now, I have not asked them if they have another list. I just know that, hey, this is the list I would personally need for my helicopter. I also know that they probably have other lists. So what does this list constitute, right? It's a list of we use frequently. Well, I don't want to name a table list of we use frequently. What we call that, there are a couple ways of calling it. We ended up getting on the idea of the words of a library. It's a library for a specific maintenance thing. So library of needed parts for an individual
Model?
inspection of an individual model. So the idea is that hot air balloon Ken has a Model 5 luxury hot air balloon. Okay. It's got a water bed in it. It's big for couples recently married or who are very want to want to be busy a mile high, right? So that's the hot air balloon Ken mile high air balloon. The honeymoon hot air balloon is in for an annual inspection. We want to not add all the individual parts, so we want to bring up a list and show me the presidential 747 hot air balloon model one, hot air balloon model, all the way down to the model, and you select that model and the inspection. So in our case, this would be a belt consumable list for an annual inspection. So what the job we're doing is called an annual inspection slash 100 slash 300. That's some other. We don't worry about that. And that's the model that it goes on. So Ken's would say, if I do a new note, right? If I create a new note, how do you even create a new note in here? So this would be um, annual inspection on honeymooner deluxe balloon 5 alpha. That's a model number. That's a company name. This tells you it's got a water bed, water bed in it. Okay. So then it would be I need a widget
Well, he
A.
says the annual is a pull test on the fabric, a rebuild of the O-rings in the basket, individual inspection, gore by gore.
And making sure the water balloon does not leak water. Okay, so that's all the stuff that would be on here to support that. So
Yes.
when he's here, he's going to select this. Then we want it to auto-populate all these items here. Ching, 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 ching. Well, I could copy and paste it from over here. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. Right? Copy, paste, copy, paste, select, select, select. No, this is FileMaker. That sucks. Okay. So what we end up doing is we're going to have a single I'm going to put a single library, which is the aircraft on it. It's going to have individual parts on it, and each of those individual parts will connect over here. So what I would do is that then this is one of those relationships that some of you are like, what? It's going to be this right here. It's not like one to many, it's one to one. That makes sense. So this is a catalog, and this is the overall catalog library. This is the catalog. This is a specific part used in the catalog. So we're back to this issue of data modeling. Questions. If there's no questions, then I don't think we're live streaming because there should be questions here.
Someone's bringing up XREF tables. Which join tables, all the many, in this case, the table name would not be join table what? Line items. I think we'd probably do parts because we've done this. We've done this
We've
with
built
tasks.
we built this. No. We've done this. It's already built with in our BVA system, right, Margaret?
Oh, yes, no, okay, yes, correct.
So this is the part. And actually, when I built the table, I said individual parts action. I used the word actually used. Well, that's redundant. Well, maybe, but if I come back in a year or two, or someone else comes in behind me, if it says actually used, they're going to know where those parts went, as opposed to this is individual parts catalog. I don't know if it says catalog on it or not. Well, look at that. That may be used on a work order, a library, library. It's a catalog library. Okay, so This is the library. It's the aircraft and the inspection of the type of vehicle and inspection. An oil change at 10,000 miles for a Nissan Maxima or something, right? Come down here. These are the parts you need for an oil change annual on the Nissan Maxima at 10,000 miles. Ding, 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 20 items. When you press the button, it needs to take these 20, essentially copy and paste, create new records over here, and build it that way. That makes sense.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't normally use as a cross-reference. I've seen that before. It's not a term I normally use. I normally make people label things all the way out. So
It's a
technically,
Nick term that pops up when he talks about roughly the same thing. It's something that he uses.
okay,
So that's why
yeah,
it's
that's fine. You can translate for me to Nick. Then that's totally cool. So this is already built. So let's just talk about this. Is not in, although we could probably build pieces of this in there. I wonder how long it would take us to build it out. But if we go over to, if I go to FileMaker 21 and I go over to here to Big Valley. So here's what I've got. So if I go to File, Manage, Database, and let's go to tables here. We have, let's see. So we have, here we go, parts, consumables, library. Okay, that's the library. Parts, consumable, library, line items. So everyone following along here? So parts, consumable, library is this one, right? Parts, consumable, library, line items, which are the individual parts. You can say parts,
yes.
consumable, individual parts, whatever. You could name it a couple ways. I wouldn't call it cross-reference because you need, yeah, not good. And then you'd
Yes.
have parts, consumables, used, which is the word used on the work order. Okay. So these three are here. Okay. They're built already for the customer. Okay. So the rub is that, and this is where we find ourselves today. And the today is clicking away very rapidly here. If I go back to BVA, I'm going to say okay, or I'll cancel. Come back over here. So this is there on the work order. Then, and if you see little things that say stealth information or weird little notes, those are because I'm logged in as administrator, I can see more stuff to help me out. Discrepancies. So these are all the little issues that they've been working on with the signature and approved and all that stuff. Parts and consumables new. They're not using it. It says 15 here, but they're really not using it. The biggest reason they're not using, so part number, this is our internal part number. This is the part number for the actual, from the manufacturer, whatever. This is the name or the note, okay? And then what I did over here is I wrote that it came from the overall part library is library. See, these are all 15. Part library 15. These are individual line items from part 15. So I'm going to pop a new window. I'm going to go home. I'm going to hit this button right here. So what I do is I have the home controls here, and I think we do this in starting point. What I call secondary or tertiary important buttons that are kind of buried here. So we have parts used on the work order, parts, consumables, library, parts, line items. Maybe those two should be switched position, but because
Yeah,
really,
because line items is the center one that's connecting the two.
yeah. So let
Yeah.
me
For
put
people understanding's sake, let's just swap.
yeah, let's do that. I'm going to put this one over here and this one over here like that. So then they're kind of closer. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So these three here, parts library, part library line items, that matches this over here. So we have that one is that one is that one. This one actually uses this one right here. And I said attached on work order. It should say used on work order. Attached. Let me see. Actually used. That way we're being consistent. Okay. I'm going to say okay. Close that. Browse mode. So little tweaks along the way. So we have that. So if we want to see this, we can press this button right here. It comes up with a very basic, once again, looks like starting point. These are the two libraries that we have so far. There are 14 related lineups. So I click on this one. These are the ones that are brought over. Okay. Now the reason the customer's not really fully using this yet is that if you look at the piece of paper on pages over here.
We still don't have the layout that matches that piece of paper, right?
Well, that's what I'm getting to. So
Okay.
forget this number here and forget these two numbers. These are numbers here that are for me, for Richard. This is so we can see how things are connected. So if it doesn't make sense, we can see this is why I don't put UUIDs in here. So if I have to triage this, it's a hell of a lot easier for me to figure out where 19 is because there's 22 right there, right? Makes sense. There's 20. I don't use UUID unless only time I use UUID is if I'm building an offline application that's going to synchronize with offline people. So here's the rub. These columns don't all exist over here. Over here we have, do we have any of them? Not really. So that's that screen there. If I come over here, let's see if we've got a maintenance layout. So we have discrepancies. We have parts. Look at used on work order. We know what that one is. Da, da, da. Let's see, there's 500 and 501. I'm going to go this one. Ooh, that's pretty bare bones. I'm going to go to layout mode. Then I'm going to use my scroll control, which is mostly turned off for all you folks. Don't forget to go right, customize, and put it back up here for yourself. Here we go. There's this one. ID, so the work order attaches to the ID of the internal ID of the part, the customer's number right here, the actual official industry part number, and then that, it's probably only that O-ring there because it's one of these, this is a commodity part. It's probably used on water beds and jet engines and all sorts of shit. So anyway, so that's, and then you see oil and then a facet filter and then, whatever. So here's the rub is that we don't have all the columns here. We don't have the columns here. So what we need to do is we need to start building it.
Hold on. Yes. We're going to pause because hello, Derek. I had this question when I had to do this because we have technically made this system for tasks. And I remember going through and trying to understand. I did not understand either. Derek Beck, sorry if I'm asking a really basic question. I am still having trouble understanding the difference between the library and the line items. They feel redundant to me, so I'm definitely missing something.
The best way to do this is to do it with paper. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen briefly here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. Derek, you need to pay attention and provide feedback promptly when you see this. So this is the MR. So we're going to do, so the helicopter behind me, let's just pretend it's behind me. This one behind me is going to get an annual. So these are the parts that we need because when we do it's like an oil change in a car, but there's like 4 different oils on this thing, 5 different oils on it. So we're going to drain them all out. And every time we take the plug out, unlike your car, when we put a new plug, the plug back in, we put a new O-ring on the plug. So remember the oil thing at the bottom of your car? Imagine if the oil changer people put an O-ring on there, right? So they put an O-ring on there, screw it back in, run it, make sure it doesn't leak, it's good. So this is a list of all those little parts for this. So these are the specific parts we are using on that helicopter. These parts don't have a serial number, but they could. Because on this, we're also going to put a new starter in it. Even a starter on a car has a serial number. Anything that's marginally complex has a serial number. Does that make sense? Okay. So these get used on that. Well, I'm doing paper, forget computer. I need these parts right here. Margaret, help me out here. Okay. I'm going to look up in my handy dandy book of the I need for this. So then I'm going to pull up a list. There's the list. This list right here is the I need on here. This is what I'm actually using. This is the book that says this is the stuff I should use.
Yes.
I should use.
Yes.
So I need to be able to basically copy this list and put it on here. So these are line items. These are line items. Okay. However, this is for this model helicopter or this airplane. How many models in hell? So first you have to find the right binder. This is a library of parts for this aircraft. Binder, 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 binder. The first thing we do, if I go back and share my screen, what we do is I'm going to create a brand new new record. Okay. A brand new work order. We start a brand new project. It's going to be a brand new work order for whatever. We need parts. I don't want to type it in by hand, right? Because didn't Richard say there was a binder? Okay. So let's add the new part or consumable. We could add them line by line by line by line. And then Derek, the people who hired you are promptly going to say, I need a better developer, someone who doesn't suck so much. And Derek goes, well, because I'm a badass FileMaker developer, I'm going to give them a button. You can make the button here. I hit it right here in the hamburger menu that says load a set of parts and controls from a pre-existing library. So what I'm saying is find the binder These are the two binders I have so far. Find this binder or this binder, and then find that list and copy paste them over here.
Yes. And then also, frankly, the line items can belong to multiple binders, right? So like
They could.
that's
They
part of the
could.
reason why they're partitioned out is if you want
Yes.
to interact with only a single line item, you don't want to have
I
to go digging through a
I pressed the
library to
button
do
right
it.
there. It just did it. It
Oh,
just did it literally
yes.
that fast. So let me do it again. I mean, this is the awesomeness of FileMaker, right? So here we are over here. I say I want to add a pre-existing, and then am I having a problem here, Margaret? Let me see.
Are you having a problem?
Is there a button down here? I can't see the button. Is there a
I
button on
also
here?
cannot see the button.
And I'm trying to get it to scroll over here. Where's the, so you select it.
Yes.
Where's your multiple selector thingy at? Where you
That
select?
doesn't exist for this system. That's I made that for discrepancies. We never added it to parts.
Okay, so let me show you something in discrepancies that we wanted. So do we understand what we just did? We found the binder, right?
Yes.
Right? We found the binder. Is Derek following this? We found the binder. It copies the parts in here, right?
Yes. He says that he thinks he's following it. Please let us know if if it like any. This is the hardest thing to understand about this. Like I said, took me forever to get it.
So here's the deal with this. So here's part of the problem with this is it says this list right here looks suspiciously. These are the parts that are used. Okay. And over here. Whoa. Let me go back over here. Okay, that's a lot of fun. Back over here, go back over here. There we go. So if I have this is the portal. These are the actual line items. This is the same data. This is a portal. Once again, if you're not familiar with portals, please go watch. We have recordings online about portals and stuff
Yes.
like that. But remember, this is the actual data, what we call the maintenance list view. This is the same data that's loaded into a portal, but it's limited to this work order right here. So then the other window is that, well, you have this table and layout, then you have this one over here, which is going to be the parts library line items. Okay. These items look suspicious like these items. Okay. This is the catalog. This is the catalog. There's only going to be one of these O-rings in. Is this, see this 024 right here?
Yes.
MS 32481-024 O-ring. Okay. This is only going to be in here once ever. Over here, it's going to be on this. Every time we use one, it'll be used over here. This is like the data modeling we talked about. We go back to data modeling for the 60-day training, where we have students and classes and things like that. If you have a class, a course curriculum, but then you offer it 3 times a week or something, you have the master catalog, but then you have the individual implementation of that class or that part, if that makes sense. It's just such a
Yes. So yeah, no, because the parts basically the parts library line items. I'm just going to say it's a book. Let's say the O-ring is a book called the Bible. There are many versions, even if that's like the master copy of the Bible. There are a billion versions of the Bible scattered across in a different billion places. And that could also be part of different libraries. Like it can be part of a museum, or it can be in someone's house, or it can be at a church. So you can have one book in a multitude of different places. And the library is a way of both organizing it, and the work order, actual used work orders, is telling you how many copies are actually out there in different places. So like an O-ring.
yeah, it's hard to do that without visualization. That's why I always sit and
Yeah.
visualize. So this is the overall for the model. Then you flip and you flip and you flip and you flip and you flip until you find this is the parts for that inspection. And we need all those under that work order. So the people say, well, why don't you just reference the catalog? Okay, why don't you just reference the catalog item so it's not in there twice? Well, you have to actually have a record. You could call it a join table, but it's really the parts actually. I mean, it's a join table, but it's the parts actually used on that aircraft, on that work order, on this date and time. Very specific. It's a very specific implementation. The other thing that goes on here with this real quick, and this is, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen so you can put this up, Margaret, is that when you're over here on the actual work order, these are commodity items, but what we're going to do is that we're going to put a serial number field in here, and that makes it not a commodity. Like an Ethernet cable doesn't have a serial number. But once again, we talked about serial numbers towards the top of the show. We want to know where those rotor blades came from. Listen, Bell had a deal where they didn't glue the rotor blades together properly. This is about 10, 15 years ago on the Long Ranger, a bigger version of what I have. And they'd used the wrong kind of glue or adhesive. There's a lead weight on the end, and the lead weight started shifting around in there. So the rotor, as you're flying, would go out of balance. It ripped the rotor head off of an EMS helicopter and killed everyone. And so they went, well, that came apart. So they investigate. And then they find out that serial number sitting here was, say, number 5,000, right? And this would be another field, let's say number 5,000, right? Or whatever on the serial number, okay, on this rotor blade, right? And so you have a serial number field. And then what they do is the NTSB and the FAA and everyone goes ape shit, and they figure out that the similarly all manufactured same batch was blade number 4,118 through 5,121. Those are the affected serial numbers. Every one of those has to be pulled off the helicopter right now. I mean, immediately. Because if you fly with that, we know that this one was bad. We found enough. They probably find 2 or 3 other ones. They check them. They're bad. They know this entire batch is shot. And if you fly with it, you're going to die eventually. Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. So this is a serial number here. This serial number here would never go over here because this is the generic items. That makes sense. This is a specific item with a specific serial number. So we have to have that kind of fidelity.
Yes. We have a flurry of conversation. So
okay, I will. Yeah, then we'll run this flurry of conversation. We'll pick this up tomorrow.
Yes. No. Yeah. Someone said, "Oh wow, 4 o'clock has really snuck up on me today," and I got my votes. So correct.
Good.
You could have a line item that has many parts. Like selecting the item would reduce all individual items from the inventory. So, like, you could have a certain amount of O-rings. So they're asking basically where would we put the number of O-rings available? That would be in the line items, right?
Okay, so you would keep that over here if we were going to keep a current inventory level of parts or current on hand would be right here. Then as they get used over here, it would deduct over here. We're going to put that in the starting point one, but we're not going to put it in the BVA one because they manage that with this other system. Okay. But that's because they already have it. It's in a computer. And once again, but yeah, you'd put the inventory in here. So then if you rolled it out over here, say like you had 100 quarts or, they buy the pallet down here. So they probably have 20 cases of this Eastman oil, right? And that's jet engine oil, which is shockingly really expensive, right? And so if they use 10 quarts here, we would have a quantity field over here, put 10 in there, right? Thus far, they don't have enough of that although we might need to put a quantity in here, Margaret, and then do the quarts separately like that.
Yeah, I kind of assumed we
needed a quantity. I think we need a quantity because we need to be able to handle that properly. So us sticking the quantity in the description is bullshit. That might be a good note, or we may need 10 QRS. I will
that's in the wrong spot.
No, this is a note, right?
Yeah.
And then I say we're going to check it. So this becomes a note for someone to, whoops. There we go. It becomes a note for someone to chase down or whatever, right?
Yes. So yeah, we have more questions.
Go questions.
Who is keeping track of changes made by the manufacturer, the FAA?
Generally, a manufacturer will be certified. The FAA checks to see how they manufacture it. They certify that they have a process. Dumb as this is, one checklist the process that your staff is on a drug testing program. They're not on drugs. So when they're making the part, they're not high as a kite. As dumb as this is, that I'm sure is part of it. But you'd make sure that it's this kind of material with this kind of hardness, and then they test it to failure to make sure it meets the engineering specification. Then they bless that company. And that all goes good until something comes off down the road.
Yeah.
So
no, I think
that makes sense. Yeah,
well, I thought they were asking, like, basically, is the parts manager like sent like a little like email that she needs to go looking for this?
Oh yeah,
no.
Yeah. So this shop here is what they call an official FAA maintenance shop. It doesn't particularly matter. It's called a 145 designation, Federal Regulation 145, and that's an official rubber stamp category. So if there is an emergency alert, the FAA or in conjunction with the NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, will send out an urgent fax email to all the 145 shops. There's probably 30 shops or 40 shops like that in California. So it's a very, at the end of the day, how many people are like that in the United States? I don't know, 500 maybe in the United States. I'm in one of the 500 right now. So
Uh,
it's not like sending every owner of a Toyota, hey, go check this. We're sending how many Toyota dealerships are there, right? One in every town. There might be 20,000 in the United States, maybe, if that. Same thing.
uh, uh, yeah, okay. I'm looking at the conversations happening. So, line items to library. So a library is essentially a subtable of pre-filtered lists from the master table library, which is the line items.
Yeah, it's filtered in such a way that this this would be, I could say example, I would say here's 500 D model, right? And Hilo, okay? So I would say 100-hour inspection. So every 100 hours, that's like a 10,000 mile oil change kind of thing, right? What that is, okay?
Yes.
So 100-hour inspection. And so so then all the related records would be related records that we would use this here. That makes sense?
Yes. Who is meant to make the libraries and keep them up to date? I would say libraries would be the mechanic's responsibility because there's no way that a parts manager would know how the parts need to be organized for specific models.
Yeah, no, the mechanic they probably pull out of a binder and then throw that at the parts manager, knowing how they operate here, right? So, but yeah, you would have the parts manager put it in, or the mechanic, if they're not totally slammed, would put it in FileMaker. I mean, we want to make it pretty and easy to understand. So the idea is that, if you're like over here, you're back over here, home, you go back over here to the tab right here, and you say, let's go to the parts consumables library. We say, hey, let's create a new, so then, here it is. I mean, this is kind of we need to put some other columns in here, which is what we're going to do. But you say, use 500 Delta, and then you would say, not just the model, because there's going to be probably 20 different inspections for this model. This is going to be the 100-hour. And for all you car people out there, it's a 10,000 mile oil change or a 5,000 mile oil change or a 10,000 100-hour. I think it's a service and inspection both. They're just checking to make sure that the front doesn't fall off. For those of you seen that video, it's a really funny video. Well, the inventory of available quantity would be in like yeah, over here in the light items, right? Um, and the quantity used would be on the actual, used on the work order here, and that's why notice it's missing here. This is part of what this live stream is. We're building this stuff, okay? No, we're building it right now. The customer's like, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Yeah, we're building your." They're like, "You can get that done." I said, "Yeah, we're gonna." So you see where we're at, but we're missing. In fact, we started doing it on the other layout where we have all these other columns. And so what we figured out was that as we go to the column over here, no, this column over this one, here we go, conservable. Okay, these are the one actually using work orders. So what we do is we come over here. If I go to layout mode, we have, I'm not sure what the status is. I'll have to revisit that. The amount they ordered or needed. Okay. Right. Okay. Or I'll say total amount. How about this? Total amount. Total amount needed. Does that make sense, everyone? Total amount will need to complete this thing. Okay. And then units, whatever amount issued. Okay. This is not a great answer. So what we're going to do on this one, well, you guys all like this one. You have amount issued, but that's kind of So I'm going to go into field definitions, file, manage. So this is already something we had decided already. If I go to parts used, okay, then we have the amount issued. This is going to be, I'll say, parts pulled or amount AMT part. This is the part manager pulling it for you. Okay, I'm going to change that. Okay. Then we have the next one will be the mechanic pilfered. Okay. I might change that name down the road, but the idea is that the business process here, whether the mechanic pulls it, will depend upon the level of stress they have and what's going on, right? And like I said, if it's 4:30 and they're trying to get this done, the customer's sitting there tapping their foot saying, hey, we got to take delivery of this. If they can get it done in 15, 20 minutes, they'll do it. They might run upstairs and grab a part. So this is, so then I'm gonna, hang on. Okay, amount that the parts manager pulled. So the parts manager, if they get the idea is that was part of, okay, back up, everyone. Partly what we want to do here is get these people to get along better and not just run into each other, right? So Margaret's laughing, right? So by us building this and acknowledging their business process, so parts manager pulls it. So if they're getting along good, they could give the list of parts that we need to the parts manager in the computer. The parts manager could come over here on their screen of parts over here and say, big print button, print me a pick list. Or if they're on an iPad, print, let's just get the list on the iPad. They can go find the parts, put them in a box, walk it downstairs and give it to the mechanic. Say, hey, this is everything you need, right? That's where this should go. That's where a good cohesive team works together to solve all these problems, right? And so, but to support that, we need a database that will support that. So this is the part, the parts manager found these parts for them. Okay, I'm going to make it even a little taller here. There we go. Parts manager pulled. And then I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to say, this is the amount that the mechanic went up on their own initiative and pilfered. I'll be,
Okay, so those two combined would be the actual units actually used.
that have been deployed or given to the
So there would be a third fill.
mechanical mechanic for now just call it that because it's kind of funny and it's very true. Okay. So then the total deployed, and the reason I'm putting this there is like, oh, it's unnecessary. No, it's very necessary. That's the problem. It's very necessary. So then over here, as we're building this, we would say, well, the mechanic doesn't particularly really give a shit about the price, right? Does that make sense? I mean, they don't.
Yeah, no, the price would be viewable on the line items because that's where the parts lady would probably hang
total.
out. You would care about price.
I'm going to say the word deployed. Does anyone have a better word? Like, we pulled them out and we stuck them on
total
the aircraft?
Used. Start quantity, end quantity. So far.
Yeah,
well, the problem is, shouldn't this be like a maximum list though? Of because no matter what it is, it's going well.
Well, back up. Okay, so let's just do this. We got the parts pulled and the mechanic pulled. Let me just add these up. And I'm not worried about stored and unstored, any of that shit right now. We're just going to wing it. Okay, so that is going to be this. And then we want, so if I say okay on that, give it a second, it's going to process. Won't take too long. Everyone be cool. We're going to land this airplane. What other questions we have? Because I really want to, so then this column here would be the total. And you're like, whoa, that's redundant. It's like, no, not with these people. I think they would want to see it. So here we go. So I'll say total used so far. So total used. So once you have this all that's why I'm being very verbose with it. So then if we go to browse mode and you're over here, so how many we need? We need 10. The parts manager found, well, normally what would happen, we need 10. The mechanic pulls 3. Can't find any more. The parts manager goes, I found 4 more that were spellbound behind the shelf in the inventory room. So now we need 10. We have, between these two groups of people here, collected 7. Then we have to get the part. This is the next column, which is, hey, we have to order this stuff on order.
Well, that'd be a column I'd probably have show up after, they that doesn't matter.
Okay. And part of this, me and Margaret are still kind of working through right here on this, but they have to put an order together and to get that going. Now the order will be handled in the other system, but we want but here's the rub. If we, I'm going to just change that. I'm going to say on order. We're going to want some sort of notes field over here. So say this is on the user's screen and that, And once again, then this brings up a really good question. You would assume that this would, yeah, you're thinking like, well, this would be the ones that you haven't used so far, right? But um, we have on order. There we go, on order. And so some of this is as us going through this and kind of thinking this out with the customer, what this looks like. But you could say, well, this would always be that minus that, and it would be three. Probably, but I'd want to ask the parts manager if, and then what you'd
Well,
also,
because these are the work orders, right? So really the mechanic's only going to care about the ones on order for their specific work order, but the
that's
parts
not,
lady
that's,
will want to keep track of, if she orders 50, the mechanic's only ever going to see 3 on order, but she'll be seeing the maximum amount on order, right?
correctola. So she would see that in a quantum. And so what they want to do is say, have all these columns over here. So we're going to have to put these columns up here, Margaret. Okay. And then the other part of this is they want to put a note saying, oh yeah, um, they want to put a little note, not in the part name, but in the note field, ordered from Spruce is a big distributor, like huge. I don't know if they're part of Boeing or not. I think they were bought up. So part of Spruce on this date and time, and then initial it, or then say ETA, because they want to know when it's going to come in because they're climbing the walls, 21, 25. And so then you'd say it's the parts person, Richard Carlton. And so they could see on here, maybe we would make this, I don't know if I can color this or not, make it italic, and then see, it's got an auto style thing in there. It's cleaning the style out. But you see that. So, but the idea is that they were over here, they could see a note that they're missing three, but they're also on order and what the ETA is. That makes sense. So this is that back communication back from the parts manager back to the people, the mechanics that are down in the shop working on stuff.
Yeah.
Because they can't finish it until they get all 10, because then it's going to sit over there with all the hatches off, and they take the hood apart and half the engine apart on your car. Most of you, if they did to your car what they do to a helicopter, you your pants. 10-minute oil and lube. They ripped all the tops of all the hatch, all the trunk off, lift the hood of your car, rip that off, get down in there, check everything. Then they're missing oil filters. Like, hey, just leave it here. Come back in a week. We'll have it put back together for you. That's actually how it is with this stuff. This isn't 10-minute oil and lube on a rotor blade. It doesn't work that way. So anyway, but yeah, that's this conversation. That's what we're building. Is there questions? Because this is about what other questions you had, Margaret, we wanted to answer?
Mostly there's a lot of like discussion and froth over the line items versus library versus actually used on work order, which I get. Uh, someone mentioned that this is a very complex. There are so many variables.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, to be clear, this is not building a database to track your DVD collection or your VHS tape collection. I mean, this is a real business process. This is not unusual. This this exact is already built in use in almost every automotive shop on the planet. Because that business is so prolific that there's a handful of pre-canned packaged software where they've already built this. The rub is that there's a couple packages probably available in aviation, but they want a ton of money for it. And once again, by us rolling their own, they get a really good deal on it from me. They also get to customize it to fit their needs. This part where I said the mechanic pilfered, a lot of places they would say, we're not, this is the problem. This is why I'm here. And they would say, they're not supposed to do this. So we're not going to put a column in here for this. Okay. And they're pound their fist. You're not allowed to do that. Okay. And I, knowing human nature, know that's bullshit, because the second you turn your back and everyone's gone, and then something happens, they're going to go pull stuff. Well, that person's going to get fired. Okay, go fire the mechanic. They're in short supply. Good mechanics are good FileMaker people. Really good FileMaker people are in short supply. Good mechanics are in short supply, right? Well, and what were they doing? They were making your customer happy. You're going to get mad at them because they didn't log a part. So instead of being the evil HR person and beating on your chest and beating on them, you need to find a way for them to meet your needs, meet the customer needs seamlessly and easy without people getting wrapped around the axle. So here with this company, they kind of, to a degree, kind of given up on parts being super tightly managed until now, where they have an opportunity to do it in software to manage it better. It still won't be perfect, but I'm guessing that it will be, they probably, they probably build 60 or 70% of the parts that they use right now, maybe. They'll probably build 95% when we're done. There'll probably be a handful that'll leak through for whatever reason, but it'll be much better. So once again, I'm gonna explain this. So if you're if you're on a work order and you're working on this aircraft over here for whatever reason, okay? And you want to add a part, right? Right? You're going to want to add a library of parts. So you come over here, you come over here, you're going to scroll. We have a button here. You're going to bring this up. It allows you to see it's a collection or library or group. Okay. You have, and once again, this should be full of stuff. These are just sample records, right? Although this one's probably pretty close. This would be, and then you're going to search for Bell or maybe 206, and then you're going to find, how come that didn't work? Oh,
I mean,
it's
we're
working.
looking
It's working
at
just
it.
fine. It's working just fine.
It worked. We're
Took
looking
me a
at
second.
it.
That worked just fine. Yeah. But the idea is that this is in here. Listen, if all we're going to have is 5 or 10 of these, but think about all the possible. Every time they do a new inspection, they would add it, do the parts and add it in here. So then it would be part of that. Give me everything for the Eurocopter for Sikorsky or something, right? For the Toyota Camry 2025 model. So it comes out of it's a master list. The master list, you're going to pull up. This is the aircraft and the inspection, or the aircraft anyway. Then you're going to find the inspection. And then you're going to see the list. And I say, I want that list, copy paste it into that specific work order. So this is the catalog or group. This is the line items. These line items have to be replicated essentially into the actual used line items. Okay.
Yes.
It's funny. This conversation is more about data modeling. That continues to be like that, Margaret. And you've seen this with the 68 training.
Well,
data modeling is the thing, right?
It's the biggest problem. Like I said, I distinctly remember us having this conversation. We had this exact same conversation about discrepancies, and I did not understand discrepancies, frankly, until I had to build the picker list. And at which point I finally understood the difference between the line items, the copies of the line items that were actually being used, and the libraries. Because it seems like it should be a really obvious concept, but
well, okay, here's the other way of doing this, and we've tried to, and they intermittently do that here.
Yeah.
They say, well, okay, this is the other end of the conversation. I have this list. It's already in FileMaker on this project. I don't want to type this all over again. Can I duplicate this work order and have it move all its line items over like we did this annual last year? Why do I have to type this in the next year? You don't. You could actually identify the paperwork from last year and have it duplicate across. You could do it that way too. But then you have to know where to hunt to find a previous one that was set up. And actually, in our case, we couldn't tell which way the customer wanted to really use it. We built it both ways.
Yes.
And they've used it both ways.
Correct.
And it's just because.
Yeah, this is also the thing they went down and hunted down and used before it was ready. Like I had hidden it like in layers of buttons, and they found it somehow, which is hilarious because this is
because they really wanted it. They wanted to save time, and they knew that if they found the button, if they could find the button, push it, it would probably save them time. Never mind, hadn't been really QA'd yet. I said, Margaret.
No, I had just done the first pass.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea is that we build a feature, a test feature into a live database. Please hide the button so the customer doesn't press it. And they wanted it, so they went and grabbed it.
Thankfully, it worked. It didn't delete anything.
Yeah. So
anyway,
is everyone mostly good on the modeling here? I mean, I
think so. I don't see any more questions about modeling. Just discussion about what fields to shove on the layout now. Now we are in like deep debate about layout field shoving. So
yeah, well, my goal is to here's the biggest. Can I back everyone up here? The biggest concern you're going to have is adoption by the customer. You should do it this way because I'm a professional programmer. I know better than you. No, some of you want to do that. No, you might be right, but if I go over to McKinsey and tell them I'm in charge and I'm telling you how to do this, relationship will get truncated down to the point where they won't let me in the building.
Yeah, there's a reason we have a giant green save button. The save button does nothing but commit record, and you can do that by clicking anywhere on the database. But attempting to keep insisting that the customer should know that when they expect a save button is just a losing proposition when you could just add the save button and call it a day.
So why over here did we go to this whole thing
You want to
where,
share your screen if you're pointing
yeah,
at
I'm going to
things.
try to do that. Getting into fight with employees over like that. I'll tell you a quick story. And it's one of those things that informed anytime you want to be an asshole, the problem is even if you're right, you're going to lose no matter what. And so this is a great one. So the customer, and this is another organization. It wasn't helicopter maintenance. It was actually, it was it doesn't matter. But so here's the deal. So if I'm over here and I've got parts and consumables, the question is this whole thing about Pilfered and stuff, right? Here's the deal. So I had a manager. This guy was out of the army. Name was Bob. Bob goes back a ways, and I think he's got to be 90 now. Him and I didn't get along so good. I'm sure I was incorrigible, but I dealt with him about late 90s. And of course, Bob, yeah. So anyway, so Bob comes into this company, and there's a server room, and we had 15 FileMaker servers in the server room. Okay, imagine it's like the locked parts area. Okay, and the what would happen is, this is back in the days of FileMaker 5 and 6. FileMaker server would fall over. The developer who worked in the other part of the building would go to the server room and engage directly on the Mac or Windows server, whatever, to repair the problem. This is before AWS. The internet was there, but it was before AWS. And Bob was horrified that programmers would go into the server room to restart the server. And he kept going around and around and around. We can't do this, can't do this. And the server the FileMaker server would keep crashing. So we would go in there and resolve it. And so he finally sent this edict out, this note out. And he said that the next person does that's going to be fired. And so then promptly the next day, so this is what I'm saying about you saying the mechanics can't pilfer their, every time you do something, the other person gets a vote. Okay. So he does this thing, says, I'm going to make this action. Next person does it's going to be fired. The power goes out. There's no, the battery backups can't survive 45 minutes. They're dead. And the engineer and the power comes back on, and all the database servers either open the crash databases or they don't open anything, or they're trying to restart. And there's one IT guy who's allowed to be in the data center, and his servers all the way around, looks like Amazon. But it was like, well, they were up to naming servers like number 25, and they started at number 1. Okay. I remember number 11 was the one we used for Europe. So I was there. And my employees saw this letter, they had it printed out, and they said, well, so long, we're going to lunch. They walked out. The customer's down, it's offline. Cisco Systems, big customers. And the mechanics went out the door. Why? Because they're not allowed to go up there and resolve it, because they don't want to lose their job. Except that at that time, the correct answer was for them to go in there to assist the IT guy. What happened? I was blamed. I didn't cause the power outage. I didn't cause a policy. I was blamed because my staff weren't cooperative. So, Mark, you never heard this story. So
No.
I'm doing this because I know that even if they say you're not going to do this, what'll happen is something will happen. The customer will get pissed. They'll come back in and they'll change their policy on this. One way or the other, yeah. So just so all of you know, how do you get to be 53 or 54, whatever old I am, by all the bad that you've done or that you allowed to happen? Because at the time, I didn't know what to do. And I think I was in a no-win situation. My engineers actually went all out to Starbucks or something at the time. They all got in a car, like 12 developers, FileMaker developers. At the time, I had 12 people at this company because he passed a letter. We can't touch it. So you call us on our cell phone. That's back deal. A cell phone was a big deal. Call us on our cell phone when the server's back up. We'll come back to work. And so they could have been restored in 10 or 15 minutes. You put 5 or 6, 8 developers in there, and they're all trained on how to manage FileMaker server, right? Old days, FileMaker server would fall over, right? That would have been a brought up as it was. They were down the rest of the day. And they were mad at me. So I'm looking ahead and not encouraging the customer. Well, you should lock that cage up and tell the mechanics they'll be fired if they touch a ring because they're trying to solve a customer problem. Part of this is FileMaker and part of this is years of experience. Sorry. This is way off topic. My bad. But it's
I
all
mean,
true.
it's kind of on topic. It's all about data modeling and trying to match customer expectations.
At the end of the day,
not,
it's customer success.
Yeah.
So here's the deal with customer success, and this is how the whole conversation. They have to want to use the software. It has to do the job for them. If there's no provision for the mechanic to go and get the shit they want, they won't use it. This will fail. You have to build it so the stakeholders want to use the software. They must want to use it. They must see the value in it. And if they go, well, how do I handle it when I have to go get a part at 4:30? It's already 2:30 right now. They're trying to run a helicopter here, right, in about 2 hours. And so they're trying to get it done. And they don't give it about what column I don't even know right now they'd even put it in. They're running that hard right now. Okay. Nothing wrong with them. It's just happens. Customer service. It's always it's a thing.
Yes.
Questions before we hang up?
I think we're good.
Everyone's tired of that, but that's how you get to be where I'm at. Enough shit happens. You learn where to pick your battles and fights, and it's not professional. Well, we could change it to mechanic acquired through tactical and stealthy means by climbing up the stairs. I don't know. Stealth acquisition. Right?
Okay. Thank you everyone for coming.
Day 2 tomorrow. We're going to actually build some more.
We're actually, yes, today we mostly have talked our way through it. Now we actually get to try to build it and see what happens. All right,
there
everybody.
We go.
You have a lovely day. We will catch you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
No.